My name is Dan. This is Shari.
Good afternoon, guys.
Our company's name is Canine Squad. I'll just give you a real quick background on us. Shari and I started as trainers back in 1990.
Almost as long as we're married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've gone back to school for the behavior end. We went back to graduate school. Our formal education is in applied canine behavior, and both of us are board certified companion animal behavior counselors. I guess when I run through two different things for an hour, we're going to go through the difference between what training is and what behavior entails, and then discuss about aggression, a couple of different types of aggression, and a couple of warning signs for aggression.
Yeah. So we'll show you now. Let's see. This is CJ. She's our 10-year-old, almost 10 German Shepherd. So I'm going to basically give you an obedience demonstration, and we'll explain a little bit about what she's doing. See, sits. Good girl. Lots. Good girl. Stay. Good job. Yep. Good girl. Sit. Good job, Mama. And loose. Good girl. Now she'll turn with me. Good girl. She'll go whatever pace I go. Good girl. And she'll stop when I stop. Okay. That is training. And the best analogy I can give everybody, you can take your children to school and they can learn how to read and how to write and how to do math and maybe play an instrument. Okay, that's a skill. But it doesn't necessarily teach them how to be good people and well-mannered people. So if I tell her to Platz, which is down in German, Platz, good girl, stay. Okay, she's sitting and staying, that's great. Okay, doesn't mean I can come over and, oh, what a good girl. Oh, oh. Okay, she could be sitting and staying and be anxious or intimidated and bite me in the face. And we have lots of clients that they'll call up that the dog bit somebody in the face, bit their children. But it's a great dog. I mean, she listens, she heels next to us, she sits, she stays, she comes when called. Yeah, that's a skill. Okay, but it doesn't mean you raise them to be good, well-mannered, well-behaved dogs. And that's the difference. And that's something we had to learn 10 years into our training career. Because, you know, years ago we had an issue between two very well-trained dogs that we had in the house, and they were killing each other, and we didn't know why. And that's what prompted us to go back to school, because we needed to know why. It was just killing us that you could put them in a sit-stay on a parade in Fifth Avenue in Manhattan and walk away. They'd come back 15 minutes later, they'd still be sitting and staying. But we could yell sit and stay or any command till the cows came home. When they were going at each other, it just went out the window, and we did not know what to do. And there was nobody like us at the time that could help us, you know, so.
Yeah, behavior is a relatively new field, academically at least. What behavior does, it looks at why the dog is doing what they're doing, explaining it to the owners, and coming up with a modification program to change the response that the dog has. A lot of what behavior is based on is work that's been done over the years with nonverbal autistic children. It's very similar, certain differences, but that's where most of the behavior modification programs that we use came from. Okay. Excuse me. Like Shari was saying, just because the dog can be obedient doesn't have anything to do with their reaction when they see another dog on the street, when somebody comes into the home, when they have possessions. Probably the biggest amount of aggression that we wind up dealing with private dogs entails either the dog being aggressive to other animals, to strangers, territorial, where if they're laying on the couch or they have food or bone and somebody comes near them, they react. Or if they're, let's say, relaxing and get disturbed. It's never acceptable, or should never be acceptable, for a dog to display aggression to somebody in the family. A lot of times we'll have clients that will start off by saying, the dog growls at me, but the dog can never bite. Okay. If a dog's growling at somebody, at some point it'll turn into a bite. It's the same mindset, just a different level. To put it into human terms, if you had a couple that's involved in domestic violence and one person shoving the other, the odds of it not escalating to a more physical confrontation is pretty low. It's the same thing. If I'm as a dog, if I'm growling at you over something, odds are over time, or given the right situation and scenario, it will turn into snapping in the air, and then what we call contact bites, where the dog's biting the person. Okay.
If we had $1 for every person that told us, I don't know, the dog just snapped and bit us. You know, that's usually not the case. They have subtle ways of communicating by body language, and if you blink, you miss it. I don't know if any of you remember, we were just discussing this case in the car. There was I think it was an anchor person in Denver. They rescued a dog from the river, it was a couple months ago, and she got bit in the face. They had the dog, right after the rescue, the dog was already hyped up, excited, what have you. The owner was probably emotional also. And the newscaster, she was a dog person, she didn't think twice. And she got right in the dog's face. And now I saw it, because I know what I'm looking at. The dog froze for a second, did that real quick, and then bit her. And, I mean, it was maybe a millisecond. But it wasn't all of a sudden, and everybody on the news was carrying on how it was all of a sudden the dog just turned around and bit her. It really wasn't. They communicate, you know, we make them more verbal, and that's why they bark to alert us that something's outside or they want something. But if you watch dogs with other dogs, the communication is more about eye contact, body language, certain cues they do with their tails, with their ears, how they tense up their body, the hackles come up. There are different combinations of things, and it's not the same for every dog. You know, her ears are up right now because she's attentive to what's going on. So when I'm walking her, let's see if I can get her into the zone when I'm healing her. Her ears will tend to pin back a little bit because she's in the zone she's focused on walking. So when I'm walking her, like I'll see her do that, I'll look at what she's looking at, and then I'll either tell her, no, heel. You don't need to worry about that, I see it. Okay, go back to walking. Sometimes, here, this girl, is stealing it. Yeah, her tail right now, it's straight down. She's a little unsure about what's going on here today. you know, she's getting older, she's almost 10, she's geriatric. She gets a little more overwhelmed, like we've done these things for years when she was younger. She's a lot more tolerant.
Just like humans, as dogs hit geriatric stages, they do become more unsure. It's why at times a dog that could be fine, excuse me, in the house for many years, all of a sudden will start having what people call separation anxiety, where they get very upset when somebody leaves. Or they start reacting defensively with aggression towards other people. Just like a person, as they get elderly, they don't want to leave the house as much. It's the same thing. They are living creatures. They learn by association, build up memory. You know, a lot of times people say dogs live in the moment, and where people get confused, the dog lives in the moment in one sense. The current behavior that they have is what's in the moment. And what we mean by that, if right now she's in a calm state and we give her positive reinforcement, whether it's petting or praising her, we're reinforcing that current state. If, and I'm going to use, she's a great example, about 6 months ago she started reacting to the thunderstorms that we've been having.
Right, she never did before.
Okay, for 9 years, didn't care about it. This year, she started reacting to it. When the dog first reacts, if you reinforce that mindset, you're reinforcing what's going on. So if the dog's anxious, and I'm trying to treat them like a human child and make it okay, it's all right, it's okay, and treat them like we would our children, in that sense, it's in the moment. We're reinforcing the fear and telling them they should be afraid and that they should react to what's going on and to how they're feeling inside. But as far as memory, they remember things. I can bring her back to where we lived 10 years ago, and she would know it like that. She'll meet people that we had as clients 10 years ago. She knows exactly who they are. Dogs develop associations that stay with them for a lifetime if they're not changed. But that's probably where people get confused on saying dogs live in the moment versus having a memory of what's going on. Okay, as far as the aggression itself, you have many different cues, and unfortunately, it would be great if there was a playbook to say this is exactly what happens. Like humans, we react to things differently. The biggest signs that you will see on them, and Sherry started talking about it, their tail position. And we'll go into it in a second.
Well, it could be combinations of tail positions.
Tail
A
position.
dominant, aggressive dog would have most likely, would have their tail straight up in the air. And the hackles here will come up, the ears will prick forward usually, then they bear in with their eyes. And all those things come way before the barking, the growling, the lunging. Sometimes they'll tuck their tail. If they're fear biters, they'll tuck their tail and freeze up. Or they'll put their ears that way, kind of like we call it bat ears, just out and flat. There's all different combinations, and just out of experience over the 20 years, we've learned to read the different combinations, and we do a pretty good job of not getting bit, not all the time, but, it's really, I'm sorry, Ken. It's really important, like when we work with a client, we assess how the dog reacts to whatever the triggers are, and then we can get to know the dog. What comes first? Do the ears come first? Does the body just tense up? Does the tail go up? Does it go down? Is it straight down? What's the facial expression? Usually, you know, they have facial expressions like we do. When they're happy, they tend to look like this. They give you the sleepy eyes, the mouth is open, it's very relaxed, clenched mouth, not very good. Another thing they do when they're fearful, we call it whale eye, because whales have eyes on the side of their head. It's just so many different little nuances and combinations. And once we're able to point that out to a client, they're like, oh, I never noticed that before. But now they have tools, they can correct at the early stages before you have the lunging. And yeah, I could correct the dog when they're lunging and pulling and growling, but it's so much harder.
You know, one of the things we do when we're doing an evaluation, we videotape a lot of those stuff.
Videotape all of it.
Yeah, and well, we videotape all of this stuff. A lot of times we'll take clips and show clients what the dog was doing, because if you're watching it frame by frame, all of a sudden you'll see the dog's forehead. You'll see a line come in over here. Like Shari was saying, with the ears, you'll see a movement. You'll see the muscles tense up in the back, in the shoulder blades. All this occurs before the dog utters a sound. That's at the point where you really want to redirect the dog and change its reaction. So, if you have your dog and you see they start building these cues, and you're able to redirect them at that point, you have a lot better odds of changing the response that you then get. Again, it's really a management tool in a lot of ways, because to truly change behavior, you have to change how the dog associates what's going on. So, if I'm afraid or become aggressive every time this person comes near me, managing it is understanding what's going on so that you can change the response temporarily. To really resolve it, you have to figure out why am I reacting this way when the person comes over to me. And with dogs, it usually has to do with different associations that happen, with things that we, as humans, a lot of times we would never think of, but to them makes perfect sense, a perfect building block to the behavior. But if you're at least able to turn around and catch some of these little signs as they are building and change the way the dog is reacting, you could prevent the dog being at the end of the leash carrying on. Some of the ways that you could try to do this, like I said, as a management, is to stop that escalation and bring the dog into something else. If a dog is food motivated, a lot of dogs will follow food, and once I'm at this level, I'm not going to care about the food. I'm not going to care about what's being said. But if I start here, and on that first step, as an owner, I'm able to bring the dog and change not only what it's doing, but where it's focused.
Right, and we have to figure out what the dog's motivation is. Like, for instance, she could care less about food. If I showed her a steak and a ball, she would drop the steak and go for the ball. So,
yes.
You know, so toys are her motivation, play is her motivation. Food wouldn't work with her at all. You know, so it's our job to kind of figure out what's going to work to redirect the dog so that we can teach a new behavior in the early stage.
But, so if you're able to break that pattern from continuing, and yeah, maybe your dog is toy motivated, usually have better odds if the toy makes a noise. Again, visual is their last sense. Their primary senses are the smell and the hearing. So, a lot of times if we're working with a dog that doesn't have a food motivation, that doesn't have a ball motivation, they might very well have a reaction to a scent, to taking a squeaky toy and spraying lavender on it. For some reason, lavender works as a very calming effect on dogs. I can't tell you why. I can tell you study after study shows that lavender works calming with dogs. So if you took a toy and sprayed it with lavender, and as the dog went to focus on the person that they didn't react to, and you made a little squeak to catch the hearing, and have the lavender on it, and then redirect the dog this way,
Good girl.
instead of having it build and have the dog react, you can bring the dog over and change, number one, where the dog's focused, and change what the dog's mind is doing. So instead of going into these building blocks of regression where, again, each dog's going to be different, but where if for some reason I'm going to react to her aggressively, if I could change that building block before I'm at this point,
Before he's even looking at it.
right, and get the dog to focus on the smell or the sound, bringing it over, you know, have a much easier time avoiding it. You're getting old, baby. Okay, do you want, before we keep rambling on, do you want to get questions specifics? Or?
Does anybody have any questions so far? Yes?
When you were talking about reinforcing the fear, what would you do to correct that?
I'm sorry, when?
Reinforcing the fear, oh baby, what are you
Okay.
doing? What would we actually do? Because we have fireworks coming up now.
Yep. Okay.
We've had unusual thunderstorms. So what would we do to try to help them grow up?
Okay, it's very hard to tell people to ignore the dog. So, what we'll tell you is to be stoic with the dog in the sense that, okay, and I'll use her again as an example. Like I said, she started reacting to fireworks, to thunder, I'm sorry. Instead of trying to cuddle her and make her feel better, which is really reinforcing, telling her that it's okay to be afraid of it, if I take my hand and put it right behind her shoulder blades here, just like a person, you'll feel it, you'll feel the muscles tense. If I take it and just hold it firmly without petting, without talking to her, I'm going to hold it until I feel her start to relax. As soon as I feel her start to relax, I'm going to start reinforcing that behavior. So, if I'm holding her just stoic like this and keeping her from carrying on without talking to her, once I start feeling her relax,
There she goes.
I'm going to turn around and then start reinforcing what she's doing.
Now, she'll still lay by us, or she wants to touch us, and that's fine. Because she'll do that with we have 2 other dogs, and she'll lay on one of them, and just lay on, just touching them. But the the other dog isn't turning around saying, it's okay, it's all right, you know, he's not putting his paws around her. He's just allowing her to touch him, and that's comforting enough for her.
What do you feel about the thunder jackets?
I haven't really tried
We
it.
haven't tried it. We're open to anything, anything that works.
Right, but how do we really know if it works?
What I'll tell you is, I'm sure it does work with some dogs and not for other dogs. I'm sure it works better or worse depending on how you're interacting with the dog during.
Yeah, what probably happens is you feel better that you have a tool and you're not feeling so bad for them, and you relax a little bit, and then they relax a little.
So you wouldn't recommend me going out, getting it, putting it on the dog and leaving the house? Because I think some people might think that would be okay.
Yeah.
Then you really wouldn't know if it's working or not anyway.
No, you wouldn't. You know, it's tough at this point with July 4th being Wednesday to really get you to the point with fireworks, but what I'll tell you, especially with the weather we've been having with constant thunderstorms, if you start doing it where you turn around and just, again, you just have that steady pressure until you have that beginning of relaxation. We're very bad at timing as humans. Our timing is horrendous. With them, it's very important. If I don't catch when that relaxation begins, then the dog doesn't understand what I'm reinforcing, what I want them to do. So it's a matter, as I feel the dog begin to relax, as I feel the muscles relax a slight bit, I'll start giving some reinforcement where I still won't talk to her, but I'll start maybe doing this. I'll just have a slight petting motion. As she calms down further, right, as she calms down further, then I'm like, good girl. Tone of voice is very important. So I'll continue reinforcing each step that she makes towards the relaxation, and then reinforce further and on a higher value. When she started reacting to the thunderstorms, it took 2 weeks to get it to the point that what she'll do now is she'll come and lay down, touching one of us, and just lay there. She won't go to sleep.
Yeah, she's not hyperventilating, she's
But right.
not panting, she's
I-
not panicking.
I don't want you panting, I don't want you moving around. I want you just made calm.
Yeah.
So that you're ignoring, that you trust I'm not going to let anything hurt you.
Now, that doesn't mean that she's happy there's a thunderstorm going on. She's still not comfortable with it, but she's not in a state of panic, and she's not drooling, she's not outwardly upset.
So if you try to comfort them when they're in that panicky state by saying, it's okay, that is actually kind of cementing in more their fear.
Right.
Yeah.
You're actually praising the way that they're acting at that moment.
You're telling them that they're good for being afraid, and telling them there must be good reason to be afraid.
Right, and this is the behavior you want.
Most of the time that dogs do have responses to fireworks, thunderstorms, short of the geriatric or medical conditions, because those become different things, it usually is caused by the owner trying to do the right thing, trying to be kind, and accidentally reinforcing. What usually happens is the dog will have that, the first time that firecracker or thunderbolt will really go off and the dog jumps. Hey, it's okay. And that usually starts it.
And often we jump.
Right,
Because you're actually saying it's okay, you're reacting.
right.
What if you just ignore them?
You can.
You can.
That's fine. What we would tell you, if you just ignoring them, ignore them until you see them start relaxing on their own, and then make sure you do something positive or reinforcing that relaxation. do I want to go into
I have-
medicine?
I have one more question.
Yes.
How do you deal with the separation anxiety, like you have to go for a work, and dog has to be alone in the house, and they get very nervous and they
Well,
start crying, you know, like,
That's,
and if they're attached to the one person.
that's a tough one to answer you because there are different reasons for separation anxiety, so it would be difficult without seeing the dog.
Oh.
You know, sometimes it's a medical problem, sometimes if the dog is really dominant over an owner, in their mind, and when we see a client, we explain the whole mindset and where it comes from. But if a dog is really dominant and kind of runs the house, so to speak, you're not allowed to leave without them. So that could be one reason. One of our other dogs, we found out was having seizures when we were at home. So it's actually pretty, this is an interesting one. The third week in June, starting when he was about a year old, 6 months old?
Yeah.
Okay, he was born with a heart condition. He wasn't supposed to live past 6 months, but he's gonna be 6 in 2 months. In very warm, humid weather, it would seem to trigger these seizures. And, you know, he was a puppy, we would crate him, because we didn't want him getting into anything or whatever. And there was a couple of times we would come home, we'd see he had thrown up in the crate, you know, and it wasn't all the time. But there was one summer we went to a birthday party. It was the third weekend, I know it was because it was Mom's birthday and a good friend of ours, Kim's birthday. We came home and the living room was trashed. And we didn't understand why. And this would go on from the third week of June to the first week of October for 2 years in a row. And we could not figure out why this was going on. You know, because when he was diagnosed with a heart problem, we decided to treat him normal. They told us to restrict his exercise, and we figured that the heart is a muscle, so we'll let him run with our other dogs, and possibly he'll build up the muscle and be okay. So what we were doing, we were playing with them like 15 minutes before we would leave so they would be calm and relaxed. But in the summertime, especially that third week in June, because you know it's gotten really hot now, the humidity would tend to trigger a seizure, which we didn't know until he had one in front of us. And ever since then, we're very careful with him on days like today. He's only out early morning. You know, if I'm around to give him a walk or a play session, it's very early or after sunset. You know, he'll go out to go to the bathroom, but he's out for 5 minutes. And ever since then, it hasn't happened. Like I say, it's going to be 6. So
You know,
it's a lot of detective work involved in what we do, and even trying to, you know, it's hard for us as owners even to realize what's going on in our own house. You know, I can walk into your house and know in 10 minutes what's going on, but, you know, my great-grandmother had a saying, no camel sees their own hump. It's the truth. You know, because we probably would have figured this out with Hank very quickly if it was somebody else's dog.
yeah. And look, when we see a client, before we see somebody really file in an 8-page intake form, we know it's a pain for people. We do it because
We always apologize in advance.
we know from experience from years now that a lot of times something that people will not think of is actually the answer to what's causing whatever the behavior or problem is.
Yeah, we usually spend a good portion of our session, when we do a session with people, probably the first 20 minutes, we go over the intake form. And even though on the intake form we ask questions different ways, same question 3 or 4 different ways to get the right answer, we'll sit and interview you. And usually during that interview, you'll say something that you don't think is significant, and we'll go, ah, that's it. And we'll say back up, explain what you just said, what happened, where it occurred, who was there, what was the weather like, what was there any sound, was there, you know, there's so many different things involved.
You know, again, a lot of what they react to that causes the associations, things that we might not react to. I said before that a lot of our programs based off autistic, nonverbal autistic children, one of the reasons for that is that they will react to a beam of light here, or a sound that's in the background that we're not paying attention to, what triggers an association in them.
I have a client that added to their kitchen, and the second half of the kitchen had radiant heating under the floor. The dog would go up to here and not cross. Now, we couldn't hear the sounds of the radiant heating, you know, but they sense things that, whatever it was, he would not go past here. You know, it's something the owners, why? The floor looks the same color, same, you know, it's just something you wouldn't think of necessarily.
You know, another thing they, like with the separation anxiety or the fireworks, a big thing that they react to is how we feel, what we're portraying. People are amazed how much they really know what we're feeling and reacting to. We have clients that will change a dosage of their medication, and every time they change the dosage of medication, the dog has a reaction to it for 5 days, 7 days, until their body gets used to it, and then the dog goes back to normal. So it really, most people will not believe us when we tell them how much they really understand what we're portraying and how much they pick up on. It's why dogs, you'll hear stories in the news that the dog can tell when somebody has cancer, or when they have a seizure, or when they have a migraine.
Well, she's a good example. I suffer from migraines. I know by her behavior about an hour before I'm going to get one. You know, Dan's mom lives with us. Her pressure was up and down. She knew it. Because she gets very, I don't want to say agitated, but nergy.
But another dog might get aggressive. Another dog might destroy things in the house.
Yeah, she'll look to engage you and try and get you to play with her. When she knows you're not feeling well, you know, she'll be relentless, like bringing a ball, and she knows we're not going to pick up a ball. She just dumps it on us. But, you know, she tries to really engage you, and that's how we know something's wrong with somebody in the family. Even with something like fear, if you're afraid of her, and you say, you try not to be, your cortisol in your body goes up, and they can actually smell it. When they say they can smell fear, they literally can. They can tell when your body chemistry changes.
Yeah, when our pulse changes 2 beats a minute, they pick up on it. So it's real many things.
Do they really see, somebody told me that colorblind, do they see us like, you know, whatever clothes you are wearing, or do they see just shadows?
Well, they do see color.
They
Yeah,
don't see
that's
colors?
They don't see as many colors as we do.
Huh.
Like she sees, this is gray. She can't see the different shades of gray, but she sees the gray, she sees the red, she sees the pink top you're wearing.
They do
can't
see
really see
colors.
different gradients of color,
Oh, okay.
but they see color.
But they have a good vision, because most of the time, I notice they go by smell, even if it's front of them, they don't know. They just smell and go. So they do see it.
They both smell
Yeah.
primary. Smell and hearing are their primary senses, but I won't say it was a wives' tale that they were colorblind. It's something that took a long time to prove scientifically that they could see different colors, just not as many, not the same spectrum as we can.
Yeah, it's probably colorblind in the sense that humans are, when they can't distinguish the different shades. You know what I
Well,
mean?
no, humans are colorblind can see colors
Well,
in
some
it.
humans though can't see,
Yeah, certain
like blue from turquoise, you know, like they can't.
yeah, they cannot see
Right.
red and blue.
like the retina has a cones, rods and cones, so sometimes human being cannot see as clear like some other human being comparatively. There are some people are colorblind.
I have a quick question, just going back to that separation thing. I mean, I don't think my dog really suffers from it, but before I walk out the door, she's looking at me like, are you taking me? Like, take her everywhere. And I'll say, I'll be back in a little while. Like, yeah, I'll be back. Is that going to cause an issue, or do you just walk out the
You're
door?
probably better off not making a big deal about leaving and coming back and just doing it quietly and calmly.
Like, don't acknowledge the dog looking at you and walk out?
Just walk out.
I already said I'm coming back, give you a preserve, your little treat, the kisser, I'll be back. And then she's comfortable. You talk to them.
Are there differences between intelligence levels of dogs? Are some dogs actually more intelligent than other
Yes.
dogs?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there differences also between breeds of dogs?
Yeah, I think
This is
so.
an intelligence between breeds.
I say German Shepherds are the smartest.
It's
It's a personal preference.
Much
Yeah,
higher. Yeah. They're very intelligent.
dogs are canines first, then breeds, then individuals. Are certain dogs bred for more intelligence? Probably. Is it necessarily breed specific? Probably not. It depends on the background lines. And the biggest part has to do with how much education you give them. Just like a person, if you have a dog that's really just around the house in the background, the education level would be pretty low. If you have a dog, like my first work dog, had a humongous vocabulary because she worked with me 24/7. So it depends, like a human, how much you teach them, and the more you teach them, the more they learn, and the more they have the ability of learning.
Yeah.
So that's probably more important than the background of the breeds, per se.
But out of our 3 shepherds, sorry, maybe, she's the least smart.
Yeah. Yeah, from a problem solving and an IQ perspective, she's definitely at the bottom of the 3. She doesn't have the problem
She's on
solving
words
technique.
with that, but a perfect example, she had a cyst removed and she had to wear one of those e-collar things. You know, our 2 other dogs had surgeries. With the e-collar, they could navigate the house, no problem. They didn't get caught on stuff, they were fine. This one would just barrel through everything. She would get caught on the coffee table, take everything off the coffee table with her. You know, she just barrels through everything. She doesn't figure out how to negotiate around the house. It's one example.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I have a 15-month-old female lab, and she's a great dog, very affectionate, really smart, but she likes to lick a lot, and it drives us crazy.
Now, there's different reasons for licking.
I mean, like, if I put lotion on, she definitely likes it.
Yeah.
But just in general, she likes to lick a lot, and we don't like it, and people visiting don't like it. Is there any way to break that? Or, change that?
Okay, there's different types of licking. Not all licking is the same. Some licking is grooming. Some licking is affection. Some licking is anxiety. A lot of times if a dog licks rapidly, there's usually due to an insecurity or an anxiety to what's going on. So it depends if you said that when I sit down next to the dog, and I'm petting the dog, she'll start licking me. That's, like, this licking would be different than if she just, anytime my arm was around here, she just lick. The reason behind it are different things. It's different. If when the dog's just licking, there's probably an anxiety component to it or an insecurity. And luckily, instead of overcompensating with aggression, the dog's overcompensating that way. But you would need to figure out why the dog has the anxiety or insecurity
Yeah, that's
in
what-
those situations so that you could change their association to it, and then the licking would stop.
Yeah, we'd have to see the context of it, what the dog's body language is.
Anytime. Anytime, anyway. I mean, she doesn't like lick like constantly, but she'll come over and she'll definitely give like a few licks, and then, a few more. It's not like constant, but it's too much.
It could be just plain old attention demanding, it really depends.
Yeah, and that would be one we unfortunately need a lot more specific.
Most cases, we do need to see the dog because we used to do things through video, people would send us videos. We had one client that actually came down from Canada to see us. And from the video they sent, it just looked like dominance aggression to us. And because all the video clips were with the family, the family was walking the dog and the dog would react to something on the street. The family was in the house with the dog and the dog would react to something in the house. So when they got to us and I took handle of the dog, this dog was riddled with anxiety. But we didn't see that on the video because of how they shot the video. We saw no evidence of anxiety because the dog was comfortable around the family. So it's very hard for us to really tell you without, there's so much that goes into the body language and the eye contact and the context of what's going on. I have people on Facebook, they email me constantly, I have this problem with my dog. It's like, you're my Facebook friend in Peoria, I don't know your dog, I don't know what's going on, I can't. It would be irresponsible for me to really advise you without seeing what's happening. I can have a vague idea, I might be right, but, I want to be sure, so I need to see it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff we could give generals, but it's very tough.
Like we'll sit
To give
and say,
specifics.
oh, it's probably this. And
Right.
then when people call us on the phone, then we'll get their intake form and we'll look through that. We also have another form on our website, it's called an ABC sheet. Antecedent behavioral
Consequences.
right. It's like an incident report. And we'll get a few of those. If the dog is aggressive, we'll get a few incident reports. And that helps us put together a pattern. But with the family, total mush. And we actually had them surrender the dog to the shelter that we're affiliated with. And now he's a perfect gentleman again. I've introduced him to several new people. Comes out happy, normal.
Is there an age that you can't, that's too old to train?
Obedience training is, if you're talking about two different things, behavior is forever. Because if you do things that make sense to them, it's innate. And we could take a 12-year-old dog, make sense to them, and if the owners are really vigilant about implementing what we tell them to do, you'll see some change. Obedience training is a little different. Like people, as we get older, like Dan and I went back to graduate school 20 years after we went to college. It's a lot harder. So is it possible to obedience train a dog like her age that never had it before? It's possible. It just takes a little longer.
If you think about it, it's very logical that if she's afraid of people and she's going to be around people, no matter how old she is, it's still easier for her if you start doing things to alleviate that level of anxiety and start changing around the situation so that I don't have that reaction. And that's probably why it doesn't matter as much. Sometimes we have to use medication more in that type of dog to help the dog get over what they're so used to, because it's so ingrained, where there's lots of different psychopharmacology, meds that you can use if you know why you're using them.
Yeah, you have to know, I'm sorry, you have to know what they target in the central nervous system and what it does. We recommend medication
Yeah,
quite a bit, depending on,
Is there such a thing as a hyperactive poodle?
sure.
so, this one's hyperactive,
Yeah.
right here, I mean, yeah.
She's very hyperactive. It could be it could be behavioral hyperactive, it could be medical behavior, hyperactive. It depends on the dog, but,
I'm sorry, this gentleman had a
Yes.
question a while ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a question on aggressiveness. Our dog is getting more aggressive and looking for attention, so he's trying to become more of a big drag. What he'll do is, he'll do a little growl, and a little, the happy whine, the cry, and now he's starting to bark as his third step after that. So if you give him some attention, throw him a ball or something like that, or play with him, it takes him away from it. But how do you divert that demand for attention so you get some peace of mind for a little bit?
Okay, well, it depends when,
Now, you said aggression, but.
He only does that when he wants to play.
He'll do
Like
it,
if we're ignoring him,
he'll start low growl.
okay,
And
and there's
he'll do
no
it.
other time that he'll growl at all?
No.
It's probably not a low growl so much, it's probably like, that's a playground.
Yeah.
and his tail will be wagging.
Well, wagging tail, it's a wives' tail, that wagging tail means happy.
Oh, really?
It depends on the direction of the wag, the speed, the position. Is it straight up in the air? Is it straight out? There's a lot that goes into reading what the tail is doing. But that's typically a play growl. If it was an aggressive, more of an aggressive growl, it would be a low, throaty.
And they also show the teeth, that's a very ground, they're very mad.
Yeah, it's just when he's looking for that attention.
You're probably better off, like if he's trying to drop a toy in your lap, taking the toy, holding on to it until he's not so focused on you, holding on to it, wait for him to divert his attention, and then you initiate the play and you end the play. But what you're doing is he's saying, play with me now.
Right.
And you probably say, oh, how cute, and then you play right into it. So, I mean, there's a whole host of things where people do. That's probably like a part of a bigger picture that's going on with the dog, and what we teach people to do. There's a lot that goes into how you reunite with them when you come in from outside, the way you feed them, how you feed them, body language, how you interact. It's usually a whole picture. It's a bigger picture, and demanding play is probably just a part of the things that you have going on. I mean, I don't say you're a big problem. How old's the dog?
A year and a half. And he's very affectionate. He's also a licker. But it's when you stop playing with him. It's like he's not ready to stop.
Right.
That's when he does
So
this.
what we teach people to do is to relate to them in a manner that they understand, and we teach you how to simulate what they would do with one another, because the way the dog is treating you is the way he would probably treat her if you met her. So the disconnect that people and dogs have is we treat them like little kids, but they look to treat us the way they would treat another canine. And their rules are a lot stricter, and the way they correct another dog is a lot clearer than what we do, because we talk to them too much, and we get frustrated with them when they don't listen. A lot of their communication, again, is very quiet, is very subtle. And nature tells them to follow calm, stable leadership. So if you're getting annoyed with him as he's demanding the attention, you're just fueling what's going on.
sooner to pick up a toy and start playing with him.
Yeah, but it-
He's happy.
Well, it's fine if you pick up the toy and you initiate it. It's different when he takes the toy and just dumps it on you and says, let's go.
He comes looking for the attention, we'll get the toy, play with him a bit, and
Right, so he's probably learned also that if I do this,
that's the reaction.
this is what the pattern that follows. There's part of it, what should I say, that usually there's more to attention demanding because it usually occurs in other times in the house, even when it's play, and it's stuff that we don't realize what they're saying, but they realize. So they expect that we understand that when the dog puts his or her head on my lap in a certain manner, they're not being affectionate at that moment. They're looking to be a little dominant, and they're looking to see if it's okay with us. And typically, we'll, oh yeah, it's okay, because we think it's always affection. So there's usually more to it with that, but a good part of it is probably that it's developed into this pattern that just keeps going and going and going.
Okay, thank you.
We have a lot of loose dogs in our neighborhood, so when I'm walking her, we had one time 3 dogs break through their fence and charge us. And I know, I have to learn how to read them a little bit better, but in that moment, I'm sure my energy is terrible, just panic, and, I don't know what's going to happen. So when they approach us, I don't know when is the right time to kind of break from that, or do I have to wait till those dogs that came upon us are ready to leave?
Are they behind the fence or they're actually coming out at you?
Well, these 3 dogs, they broke through the fence. They had like a little chicken wire fence, and they just...
And how does your dog react? Does your dog?
She's okay. She's actually a therapy dog. She's pretty
Okay.
calm, but so she didn't bark. She let them sniff. But I think I made the mistake of trying to walk away too soon. I was with my son at the time, and I'm thinking they're so reactive. I don't know what's going to snap. I wasn't really paying attention to their body language because I was just so fearful at that moment. So we started walking away first, and they just followed.
They
us
followed.
like a pack of wolves. They just followed from us all the way home.
Now, did you
Yes.
turn around and walk away, or were you kind of like?
I think I was, I'm sure they sensed it all over me, because then I was, at that point, I'm looking at this become something, do I throw a little one on top of that car? Like, I'm starting to look around, is there anything I can grab? How do I get in between them? Should I have waited it out until the dogs were, that's the only thing I don't know, when dogs approach us, because we have a lot of loose dogs, they're just off leash, and they come upon us, and then my husband, he had 3 other dogs also, not the same dogs, and he said it was fine. I know he's so much calmer, and I said, what did you do? There's nothing. They sniffed each other, like, all right, that's enough, let's go. And he walked away, and it was fine.
What I tend to do with her, she tolerates other dogs. I mean, she's fine with the 2 dogs she lives with. We brought them in as puppies. She's fine with that, but she doesn't look to interact with other dogs outside of her house. And we've been dealing with that in our neighborhood for quite a few years, where people just let the dog out on the front lawn and go inside because they think they're property trained. When you're walking with the dog, it's really your job as the pack leader to scan the environment. Like what I was saying about her ear position when we're walking, she's in the zone. She's relying on me to see what's going on and then tell her what to do. So I try and see the thing first. Now, she could probably smell it, but she's relying on me for that, and she's been trained to do that. So what I'll do is I'll calmly walk away if I see a dog coming, because I know she won't get into a fight with the dog, but she won't be happy. And I don't want to put her in that position. So I'll just calmly turn around with her and walk the other direction. If I walk or I run, then the dog will follow. And we've had that happen. I used to walk our 3 shepherds together through our neighborhood. And I had a golden retriever that I thought was on the leash with the owner. And this dog has run, she's ended up in our yard a couple of times. I didn't even know who he belonged to. And the woman came down to get her mail, and she was probably about where you are. I stopped, I made the three of them sit. I waited for her to get the mail, and I checked to see if they were still sitting. I look up, and the golden retriever was here. Now, this dog has followed us, and I tried to walk quickly, because it's happened before. Luckily, the owner got the dog back, but this time the dog was right on my guys. And he was friendly. He liked other dogs, but the way they saw it, they were a pack. And this dog came full on charging, which is a challenge. With the tail up, even if he liked other dogs, the tail was up, he was charging. Got right here. The three of them, they roughed him up, they didn't hurt him. They sent a message. You know,
No matter how well trained a dog's going to be, you put them in a situation, they'll stay there up until a certain
yeah, and
point
the dog was right.
that the threat is overwhelming, that they're going to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
The other part, if you said he's a therapy dog, if he's had any training into it to be a therapy dog, he's definitely going to pick up more about how you're feeling. Look, I don't know if you know, since I sat down, she calmed down. Okay, I used to work at the police department. I suffered a head trauma that caused a lot of injuries. I have trouble with certain lighting. She knew I was starting to get, my balance was starting to go off on me. That's why when I was standing, she started getting real nudgy and whiny. As soon as I came down to the ground, she calmed down, she knows I'm not going to fall. If I stand up, within a minute, she'll start whining again.
But what I typically do with her, and my other guys, if I'm walking them, if I see a loose dog, before they can react to it, I turn, walk slowly the other way. Because if I pick up my pace, that'll, or if I'm nervous about it, that draws them in. Because again, they're predatory by nature. So if and I do it all the time when I'm working with a dog, and I'll show the person, if I do this, the dog comes right at me. Even if they're not an aggressive dog per se, I'll bring out the prey drive in them by doing that.
So you would suggest just kind of standing your ground until the other dogs retreat, or?
Well, you don't really know what the other dog is going to do, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a hard question to answer. You know, instead of waiting to see, you're better off just calmly turning around and not cueing them that you're nervous or upset about that. Yeah, you're just changing your direction.
We have about 10 more minutes, so if there are any things you'd like to know.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, so move on.
You mentioned medication. Now, is that based on each individual dog?
Yes, okay.
Some people use the holistic stuff to calm them.
Okay, I'll give a real quick opinion on the medication. I used to teach a psychopharmacology class about it. There's many, many different types of medications that affect many different things, just like humans. Part of the problem that for years and years veterinary medicine taught to tranquilize dogs, and they would use the Valium or something called azepromycin, and it really causes the dog to be worse, because what happens is it puts the dog into a mental, almost coma state where you remove the flight capability, so I can't run from what's making me afraid. I feel very weird, and I'm still exposed to it. And then each time it happens, I start learning that not only does this occur, but I have this weird mental response. There are other medications out there that don't do that, but it has to depend on what the dog is doing. When you really, and not you, when a behaviorist is figuring out what medications to use, they should really be looking at exactly what's going on, what receptor pathway in the central nervous system I want to affect, and that's the medication I really pick. Sometimes it's a combination of medicines, but it really should be somebody that understands them well from both scientific, biological, and chemical point to know which one to choose. It's not something I can give you an answer like, take this for this, take this for aggression, this for anxiety, this for phobia. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, with my lab, she walks around a lot of times with a stuffed toy in her mouth, and she does this kind of like whimpering, which, you know, seems cute. It's not a bothering behavior, but it's just a curious behavior to me. I think she experienced a false pregnancy after she went into heat and came out of heat, and since then, she always carried around a toy, but she does it a little bit more, and she does this like little bit of whimpering as she's carrying it around. Like she brings it to you with this whimpering. It's kind of an interesting behavior.
yeah, it could be. It's possible.
Did you have business cards, by the way?
Yes. Anybody else?
Are you located in the area?
We're in Orange County. We're actually in Florida.
How do you feel about dog parks?
I'm sorry, dog park. Okay.
Yeah, that'll take
They're kind of like gyms where you have a great group of people that go all the time, and then some of those people drop off, and then somebody shows up with a dog that's aggressive and that you don't know it, or they don't care.
Well, they want to be macho in the king of the park.
Yeah. The longer we do this, and we recently had this discussion, their psyche is really based on a wolf pack and how a wolf pack operates. And a wolf pack is really a family. So I'm more of a fan of a multi-dog household where the dogs live with each other every day and get along. But it's not that natural to them to want to go play with an unfamiliar dog. Unless you're exposing the dog from puppyhood or the time you get it, all the time, and, you know, weekly, twice a week, bringing them to neighbors' houses, friends' houses, where they're interacting all the time. Yeah. You know, our neighbor recently got a dog, and when they first got him, the dog was running loose, he was getting away from them, so we got involved and trained the dog for them, but my three would go crazy when they see this dog running back and forth in front of their house. You know, if you take a wolf pack and there's a strange wolf here, they don't go, welcome to our pack, how wonderful. You know, it's usually gradual over time. If the leader is not able to lead anymore, and there's a power vacuum, I mean, there's a lot that goes into pack structure and how it works. But getting back to the dog park, for me, I don't see the need to socialize them with unfamiliar dogs. When she's not comfortable with it, she tolerates it, she works with our client dogs, she'll sit next to them, she'll walk next to them. That's all I want from her. And I want my three to get along, that I have.
And all three are very close. They really are. They're on top of each other constantly.
But if you
Even if you had a group of friends that have dogs and you got together, so it's the same dogs all the time, it'd be a lot better. Because it's unfortunately it's human nature that you get somebody that does have that. My dog king! And they like it. Okay. If you guys have any questions, we'll leave some brochures out here. You can always call us or email us or go on the website.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.